Hello, hello. We are here with our, about twice per year at this point, top 20 prospects lists for season 1 of 2025. If you're not familiar with this is an idea that kind of comes from me being a baseball fan. So in baseball, teams have a bunch of minor league teams, sort of development leagues where they have players work on their skills and sometimes they bring them up to the major leagues. And so you have a whole thing where you want to rank a team's prospects. What players are still down in the minor leagues, maybe even pretty far away, but who has the most potential, who, could be a big league contributor in the future. And so these are like rankings that writers and stuff do. And so for UVS, the idea is rather than do like a big tier list with a bunch of known quantities or whatever, let's rank the characters that we haven't seen in a while or at all, right? The characters that haven't shown up in a top cut is going to be my definition. If a character has shown up in the top cuts, even just once in the 2024 season, I'm going to say they've quote unquote made it to the major leagues, right? They're not a prospect anymore. They've shown up on the big stage. So for instance, Overhaul has a top cut, Vash is a top cut, Jean 1, Jester 1, those have top cuts. Any characters like that are not going to be counted as prospects. And I'm taking pretty much every standard format event that's in UVS Ultra for the 2024 season, including like community webcam stuff and things like that. So I'm trying to rank, the top 20 characters that are not among that list. And obviously we just had Critical Role come out. None of those characters have had a chance to top cut. So there's going to be, a number of those on here, as well as champ cards and so on and so forth. But, still some old standbys that I think are pretty interesting. Maybe got something from Critical Role. Maybe have just kind of always been around and nobody's picked them up, that kind of thing. And is at least partly in the context of the meta that's upcoming, but the meta that's upcoming is going to be a crazy mess. So it's a little hard to predict much about it. We are pretty sure there's going to be a bunch of people trying to abuse combined firepower, especially with Science Bros, or just in general, in various ways, shapes, and forms. The damage reduction prison type of deck that won Worlds and had a bunch of other high-ranking entries did not get touched at all, so there could be some people still doing that. The one-hit kill Deku is still around and about. There's also some one-hit kill decks trying to use the new Powerful 5 move and try to just shove that in for, impossible for lethal, and you can still do stuff with Elder Toguro that we saw as well, even without the Sports Stadium. There's a couple different flavors of aggro decks that are, just trying to play 5-10 damage moves on turn 2 or turn 3 and hope that that's good enough to get there. And then a bunch of decks that are shaped either playing or they're just Gene, and but that most of them playing vertical maneuvering equipment and trying to get a bunch of momentum and just try to completely trivialize blocking and defend themselves that way. And that's sort of a popular form of control right now. And then there's more other random stuff, right? You're going to have your Balkas, you're going to have your ponies, you're going to have other stuff like that. We don't really know how it's going to shake out in terms of, among these decks as well as with other things, what's going to like rock, paper, scissors each other. Out of probably some of these are bad enough against the other things that they won't really be part of the quote-unquote winners metagame. Instead, for the most part, this list is going to be kind of generic of characters I just think are neat or interesting, but sometimes, if a character kind of has a built-in answer to one of these meta threats, then that's points in their favor, right? So there's going to be a couple characters like that on this list. But yeah, so I've got some numbering on the side here. We're just going to kind of fill them out as we go. Without further ado, number 20, Ibara Shiozaki. This character made a top cut a couple years ago, did not make a top cut in 2024, so she gets to be back on this list. She got a couple of fun and intriguing toys in Critical Role. She got a water-attuned throw that is good to give -1 damage to. I believe it's called Shoulder Toss. She got Lightning Blast if she wants to run a 2-check, is a gigantic dunk. That she hasn't really had since she lost Tongue Whip. Now she does. It's a 2-check, but it's huge. It's way more damage than Tongue Whip ever was, in fact. And also, there's some cute lines that I've thought about, and we're not going to get to building for a little while, but there's the... what's it called? Mighty something. There's a 4-low-2 that gets +2 for every ally in your card pool that includes foundations. So there could be a list where we're going, attack, activate once per turn, play some foundations. Here's this 4-low for 17 kind of thing is another sort of angle that she gets out of the new set. And, 7 hand size with damage on them is, never that bad. We certainly good to be dealing damage right now with a lot of the damage reduction stuff going around. Even if you have answers for like the foundation side of things, you still have to get over Grog's -2 or Hanja's -3 or whoever. Even just Reiner 1's -1 damage. And, her own -1 damage, maybe stack it on top of a little deflect. Just a little bit of defense. She has a little bit more than 19 health. It's something, right? But yeah, kind of an interesting 7-hander to cap this off. A lot of the characters on this list are going to be basically characters that put damage on every move. But I should fill that in here. Number 20, Ibara Shiozaki. And we're going to misspell our things as we go. Number 19, Shoto Todoroki 4. He's gotten a little more attention recently compared to, prior months. He's been out for a while. Todoroki's kind of always had just classic 6-hand size problems where, you can run your latent skills or whatnot, but at the end of the day, you need to draw them. You're trying to build up to this +2, +2, +3, +3 on everything for the turn, and then you need to actually draw and pass 4 or 5 moves to capitalize on that if it's kind of a one big turn sellout kind of thing. So it's a little tricky for him. He does get the Molly 2-check attack on the death symbol, which is not ranged, but you could play that as a lead-in to get 2 extra seals right up front. Guarantee that your stuff's going to get at least +2, +2, which is kind of helpful. I'm not completely sold on that card, but it is a card. Charring Flurry is very good right now as a relatively uncommon answer to assets, but you need to find a momentum for it. He can do some combined firepower things. There's a lot of stuff he can do, and typically historically gets held back by just like the raw economy situation. But if you can solve for that and still pack all your seals and whatnot, obviously if you're sealing 2, 3, 4 things, then there's a lot of defenses that you get to climb over on top of all your stats. So he's pretty intriguing right now for sure. Shoto Todoroki 4. Number 18, and these are loosely ordered, right? Obviously, this is not a scientific thing, but Nejire Hado up here at number 18. She's going to be on kind of every single one of these lists somewhere until she tops. She has a little bit extra interesting right now. So once again, damage on face good. A 7-hand size. Some of these aggro decks are a little weak to chain blocking, so being a 7-hand size with speed reduction is also good. So you kind of get to check a couple different boxes of things you want to be doing right now. That is kind of all she does, but she does have some good symbols, some good attuned symbols. I'm pretty high on Airy Smiles right now, but she might be a little outclassed by Rodan on air, depending on what you're doing. She could be an interesting front for some spell themes. A lot of those spell-themed characters don't put damage on things, and so having a 7-hander that can block a bit, that can put damage on your little spell lines that you're trying to do, could be a way to play her. But yeah, not a whole lot to say, just kind of a generically pretty good. Speed go down, damage goes up. Both of these things are good and helpful, and you have to kind of build the deck around it. Pretty generically good stuff. Like, I thought about Nejire Hado too for at least a few minutes, but probably not quite there yet. Allura, our first Critical Role character, coming in at number 17. I get to spell this whole thing for the first day. Allura Vysoren. So Allura is interesting. She does not give stats, and that is going to be the issue, right? You have to figure out how you are actually going to assemble enough offense to actually kill somebody. You can play actions that give stats. You are going to make a bunch of momentum. You can convert that into some powerful, some EX, that kind of thing. There are ways for sure, but it's going to take a little bit of time. That response comes from an old character named Lilith that I played a bunch. It is very good. It is still very good today. It is, it was good back then. It's good now. It is a good first line of defense. You have to figure out the rest of it. You're probably still going to need to block some things or, find some attack negates. I've heard of some builds that are just turning all the momentum into Broken Psyches, and I guess not Cheerleader on these, but Broken Psyche, Decoy Duplicate, all that kind of stuff. Mansplain is another one that you can run on probably one of these symbols. I forget what symbols that card has. Or I think I called it Mansplain as a shorthand. It's something explanation. But anyway, pretty good defense, very interesting momentum generation. She's going to get some resources. How you're going to kill people, ... especially, if they are, one of those very defensive decks with lots of damage reduction or lots of speed reduction and zone fixing, the two sort of archetypes right now. But it's possibly a solvable puzzle. She's certainly interesting enough to be on this list. Number 16, Beckett Mariner, Adventuring Archaeologist. This is a character that I've had a lot of brainworms about and haven't actually assembled a list for yet. So we had Caliph in this Critical Role set doing a bunch of stuff surrounding flipping and unflipping and paying you off for that. And Beckett gets to use a lot of those tools pretty effectively. She's once you get going, she's a 7 hand size that's putting 3 damage on everything. This is good. And she does flip and unflip things. And so, you get enough of your opponent's foundations flipped, and you can play, Might Have Stone for big damage. You can play Moon something or other. The one that gets speed is just a gigantic 9 damage move. Pretty much a flavor of Caliph. If you're playing a Caliph and you're just like, my offense just isn't quite there, you can probably put Beckett on top if it's an Earth or Water deck and you're not using too much of the Air, Fire, Attune type stuff, and potentially get better results. So very interesting. She also likes the shoulder throw that we mentioned for Ibarra is also good here. Yeah, any sort of guaranteed damage, getting to unflip foundation, unflip the foundation that draws a card, be kind of an 8-hander. She's got a lot going on. She got a lot from Critical Role. Is that gonna add up to a viable deck? Hard to say. You need to figure out your defense as a 720 when you have basically nothing on face. So that's gonna be the challenge there, but not bad symbols for trying to find that kind of stuff. So I'll put Beckett here. I should probably put Archaeologist at number 16. 15, Percival de Rollo III. I think a lot of people have this guy higher, so this is going to sound like I'm hating on him a little bit by putting him this low. But the core idea with Percival is that he has Air and Death and removes cards from the game. And that means that you get to play Science Bros in a deck that can very easily trigger Combined Firepower and can play all of the Combined Firepower casino cards that remove themselves from the game when you mill them. And so when you put this together, if you find the Science Bros and you do the thing, you can lob a double-digit speed for 20 to 30 damage very early in the game. And that is very good. That kills people a lot of the time, right? Sometimes, unless they have an answer, and then they don't die. That is certainly a good play. I think there are potentially other Air Death characters you could do this on and find the remove in other ways. And that being kind of the only thing that Percival is getting you, because just, getting the stun is good. That second response is probably sneaky good, but ultimately at the end of the day, the rest of the game, when you're not doing the giant Science Bros Combined Firepower thing, you're not as good of a character as some other ones. But still someone that people are trying, people that are trying to min-max their gold. If you're trying to min-max your Goldfish and like absolutely optimize your odds of trying to nuke someone on 2, this is the guy you want. So he's going to be attractive to some people for that. We'll probably see one of these sneak into a top cut at some point, but I'm a bit of a cynic about the consistency that he might have. Coming in at 14, Nicholas D. Wolfwood, 6 hand size plus 3 damage guy. Has a little bit of the mill theme stuff going on, can do Combined Firepower things, can just not. Got a lot from the solo leveling decks, both in terms of all attuned and some death weapons type stuff. You can kind of go full send a death weapons theme between, you got some stuff in Critical Role too for that. He's very good at playing Venom Dagger, right? The 3 low 3 that he makes a 3 low 6, and if it hits, the next move is getting +6 damage, either with a very heavy lows lineup or as your low mix up kind of a deal. So he's interesting. He's very plain, right? He's very boring. Not too many people are excited to play this guy unless they just like the character, right? But still, good, solid. You have some potential. Relative to other aggressive decks that might have 6 hand size problems, he at least gets to, like, if he works a little bit, gets some momentum, he gets to be an 8 hand size, which helps with 6 hand size problems, obviously. Ranged and weapon is not that big of a restriction. You can do a mix. If you do the mix, you don't get the Venom Dagger as easily, right? You might go like Venom Dagger into Tri-Gravity, and then the Tri-Gravity doesn't get the bonus because it's not a weapon, but you can play something after that. You can play Sweeping Daggers as your 4th move, that kind of thing. So he certainly, the attacks are there, the stats are there. Does somebody build it? Does somebody figure out all the details and make it work? Who knows? He's not a very he's a popular character in terms of the IP, but he's not a very popular character in this game right now. But certainly intriguing and certainly good enough to be on the top 20 prospects list. Number 13, Mirko 1. This might just be me overrating this, but I look at Mirko 1 and I see that enhanced defensively, the second enhance. You basically get an on-demand Breaker of Sorts not quite, because they can like feed 3 difficulty foundation to that and lose the card is a bit of the downside of that. But essentially, for a lot of intents and purposes, you have a built-in breaker 2 on your character. You also have a built-in little check bonus, and you have some stats. And there's a lot of things that she makes you run to try to put all of this together. But it's an interesting statistical package for, especially for fighting some of the aggro decks and turning around and killing them, and having the check passing power and the stats to do that. Certainly don't have a list in mind, but and she has 3 interesting attune symbols, right? These are all Attack on Titan symbols. They all have some good cards on the attune. You can go a lot of different ways with her. Is almost certainly going to be Fury lineup. Probably a Death primary or a Fire primary. I think it's probably, yeah, I think either one of those is probably an option, but yeah, she's got, she's kind of unique, which is something to get you on this list, right? That kind of the defensive ability of that second enhance is a little bit different than what you see on a lot of the other just kind of aggressively minded characters on these symbols that just don't do anything at all on defense, right? So I have her in here at 13. Number 12, not the Brave Chaotic Meddler. This is a bit of a bold pick. It's simply a matter of, this character is eventually just going to put so much speed on things that everything is going to hit, and if you can find a way to seal out, or you will have to seal out the damage reduction type stuff to actually do enough damage to kill somebody, but she has a seal on her face to help out with that. She gets access to a couple thief specific, or they've milled this much specific cards, which can be pretty good in her. It has some built-in throw blocking, or even just partial blocking, which is valuable. So, pretty good character. I'm just going to take some time to build up. Might be forced onto the void symbol for Barry Shield, or air symbol for Airy Smiles, I guess, to have some sort of early defense. Lots of solve. I think people that work on this character are going to find her to be pretty good at the end of the day. The go-to kills might just be the powerful 5, right? Just, okay, making a bunch of momentum, I can play Bedazzled on any symbol. We get access to Cabal's Ruin as a thief, which is a pretty cool defensive piece that also gets you some damage at some point. So you can find the damage. It's another one of those, a lot of these critical role characters, Allura and Nana and some other ones are just, you're gonna have to solve some puzzles to figure out how to actually make them viable, so we might not see it right out of the gate. But I can't look at this and not think it has a lot of potential. At number 11, Mount Lady 2. Yet another, 6-hand size damage idiot. A little bit of a, I put Wolfwood over her in some other ones, but I think the unblockable is both getting worse and getting better. It's worse in the sense that we're seeing a lot more runaway, referee jury type stuff being played. There's the raw damage reduction stuff. On the other hand, people do like those, VME block everything decks, and she sure gets to just land one against those. So, kind of intriguing as a character that has at least a built-in answer to one of the broad archetypes that you expect to see a lot of right now. And she also got a new 6-check that she can build off of Titan Cliff. That's pretty good. The 1/6 Chaos. Man, I'm bad at remembering card names in this video. But it's the one that flips for +1 or -1 to a check and mills you a little bit. So she's not necessarily forced. She can run it anyway. Something like number 23 Pro Heroes. Obviously, her card is still good for her. But you get a little more optionality in terms of the 6 checks you're running or not running. You just run a bunch of them and check more 6s also is things you're allowed to do. Canyon Cannon itself that she probably still has to run is a little not as good right now because you're liable to hit some attuned cards or whatnot, but still all the same. You can run some attune that's maybe on the off symbol to kind of help with that a little bit. The stun of face up is a little bit better than regular stun, and sometimes even against the DR decks, right, sometimes the only cards they have face up are their damage reduction cards, and you get to stun those out with your +3 damage. So, an interesting piece. You get built-in card selection from Titan Cliff, of course. You get to run, I think I was mostly thinking about her on Void. Void and Air both get to run both Sweeping Daggers and Animus Shot, 2 of the higher profile, high rarity attacks from this set, and she can put damage on those, which is what they want. So there's possibly a little package there. Don't know if anybody's going to try it. Don't know if I'm going to try it at some point. I might try it at some point. Only so much time before Denver, but it's in the brain space. And So, Mountain Lady 2 here at number 11. Number 10, Big Mouth Titan. I've built this guy and played him a little bit, and he got some more stuff. So Big Mouth Titan's kind of interesting. There's plenty of chaos characters that can make you momentum one way or another. There's not very many fire characters to get to do that. And it turns out that leads to a lot of neat plays. You get to play the Double Fist of the Mortal Flame and just automatically have the Echo. You always have the momentum for Charging Flurry. You always have the momentum for something like Big Freaking Explosion. And you're putting +2 damage and everything, which it would be the reason you're playing him over, say, a Jester 1. And you don't have to commit foundations for it, right? It's completely free. You get to do this stuff early. You get to be a little bit more aggressive. You get some help with your 6 hand size life by being able to trade a card in your hand for a momentum that's probably an attack. He gets to do a lot of neat things. Still a little bit of classic 6 hand size problems. Mostly his attacks end up being pretty blockable and he needs to solve for that, but it's potentially a solvable problem. Very interesting. Obviously nobody cares about this character IP wise. So he's kind of just a guy you're playing if you like the kind of tricks that you get to do with him, but he's pretty neat. I have him in here at number 10. Number 9, Vax'ildan Daggermaster. This is kind of like Percy. This is one of the critical role characters that is, very big combined firepower energy. The idea being that his enhance, if you're playing combined firepowers on offense in particular, you get to ramp up that enhance a lot with a bunch of cards in your card pool that don't add to progressive. At the end of the day, you're still just a 6 hand size of putting a bunch of damage on things that almost needs to be close to mono weapon, or maybe doesn't. You could give up on that response and just play normal death stuff potentially. The speed helps you block. Absent combined firepower, this guy's probably not that exciting, but if you find the combined firepowers, you can get some really big damage numbers. You can lean into a sort of discard theme if you want. Another puzzle to solve. This stuff sounds good when you say it, and then you have to deal with actually drawing your 6 cards and figuring out how you're going to make this work and how you're going to block things and actually make use of that minus speed and so on and so forth. There's some cool death lines with breakdancing. Yeah, breakdancing. You can give an attack -2 speed and not have to deal with, not have the downside of the card that you just put in your card pool, for instance. There's some stuff like that he can do that's pretty cool. That can also be used for plus speed in a pinch if you're going in on a big attack string. So, has some neat stuff going on, has some potential for sure, has a lot of people's attention. I would not be surprised to see him top cut somewhere in here. I also wouldn't be terribly surprised if that never materializes, but that's the thing about prospects. Most of these lists, just like in baseball, the top 20 prospects, you're probably only actually going to see, 4 or 5 of them break through. But, Vex has as good a shot as many of the other characters on here, so I have him up here at number 9. It's number 8. I don't even remember a lot of these. Karasu. Karasu is one of those natural counterplay types that's interesting partly in that regard. In this case, a lot of those damage reduction decks end up blowing up a lot of foundations to do their thing, and Karasu just gets more damage when that happens, and so that this works out for him. There is, certainly stuff. Luna Ring's pretty good right now, and that plays nice in Karasu. A lot of people are playing more Irwin's Final Charge, another one that's good for him. There's some discard angles you can do on the death symbol. He's allowed to do combined firepower stuff, not really his wheelhouse. Another one of those big damage guys. Got to figure out how you're going to land things. You have to play to his gimmick a little bit, but boy, does that damage get big when everything's going right. So pretty interesting. I know there's a couple people out there that are working on this and trying him out every once in a while. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him show up at some point and make a placement somewhere. Number 7, Levi Ackerman. This guy was pretty high on the last list too, and also didn't materialize. Picking up an attack is still good. His stats are not as exciting as some other 6-handers, but you get to play an extra attack out of nowhere just because, which is about as good as any amount of stats, and he got some good ones. This is probably an air symbol angle. If you play him off of air, you get, again, the sweeping daggers and the animus shot, which are both attacks that could be very good to double up. Something he's really wanted, and I don't know if he's had really all that much of, are 4 difficulty attacks that he wants to play twice. Because if you try to play the 5 difficulty twice, now you're passing, a 5 diff and then probably checking a 5 on the 4 diff, and then you have to check a 6 on the other 5 diff. Whereas if you can go at this with a heavy 4 difficulty lineup, you're checking like 4, 5, 5, and it gets that much easier to do this stuff early on. That is, of course, all he does, right? You have to materialize your defense out of somewhere. It's another Ares Smiles angle. Ares Smiles, I mention a lot because I like it against those big aggro decks. They're mostly playing long strings of high attacks for a bunch of speed and ginormous damage. So Ares Smiles can, be a useful block and break those up. Some of them are using tricks to ignore progressive or make their next check guaranteed, that kind of thing. So Ares Smiles at the right time in that case can help too. But again, 6 hand size, gotta draw him, gotta find him, gotta solve all those problems, but it has a neat and unique core ability that has gotten a lot more relevant with Critical Role, for sure. Number 6, Grog. Grog Strongjaw, the mighty half-giant. It's very hard to figure out where to rate this guy, because on the one hand, his abilities are insane. He gives everything -2 damage. Every time something hits, he gets to store a card draw for whenever he wants it. That also comes with 3 damage attached. On the other hand, until he starts getting some of those counters, he is very much a 5-hander, right? And if the opponent isn't attacking him and helping him out, then the only way he's going to get counters is via effects or via playing mono throws. If you're playing mono throws, that comes with its own downsides of, your +3 damage is only going to get you so far when only half of it's actually going to land. And you might even run into throw hate. You might run into like runaways or that kind of thing messing you up. So, maybe more of a puzzle than people give it credit for. I mean, we'll see. Maybe it'll just turn out that the totally brain dead, play every damage reduction card you can and just play nothing but throws is good enough to beat enough things to put him into top cuts. I imagine if we actually see him make a top cut, it'll be a little bit more nuanced than that. Hopefully, maybe that's copium for me, because I hate decks shaped like that. the throws and damage redux is really lame, but he can certainly do it. And someone's gonna like dedicate themselves to this guy because he's very popular, and they're gonna figure out the right brew to get him to top cuts, I think. Number 5, Sam Rutherford, Devron Racer. Devron Sam. This guy might end up being a Denver deck, and that might be a mistake. But I've played this guy a little bit. He's really fun, if nothing else. He's gotten some good stuff from Critical Role. There's been a bunch of tech attacks, a bunch of inventor-themed stuff. He gets to play Kalo Ruin because he is an inventor. He gets to play the Powerful 5 as a tech attack, the 4-4 that can copy the Powerful 5 as a tech attack. And on top of the stuff that was in his own deck and the stuff that was pre-existing, you've got a nice little package off of order that he can run. You're putting speed on things, and that enhance to just kind of end an enhanced step is sneaky good. A number of those aggro decks, or even the combined firepower stuff, can be disrupted by telling them their enhanced step is over at the right time. He has a card that can let him use that as the first enhance and just basically make an attack pseudo flash, like they still get their blitz off, but nonetheless, right, gives you a little bit protection from them sweeping daggers in your patchwork babies or whatever. And you can use that on offense, right? Your attacks have a static 2 speed. You can say this is flash, and now you have to deal with this honestly. You don't get to use your VME. You don't get to use your damage reduction, and that can be pretty handy. Sort of, you would think that this character probably needs to find some damage output. He does get, he has Powerful 5. He has ways to put damage on things. Definitely needs to find more defense besides just the one trick of ending the enhanced step. So a lot to solve, but a lot of interesting, he's differently shaped than other characters. He does some things that nobody else does, and that's always good for your chances of, seeing play and breaking into a top cut. Number 4, Mitchell Cimino. The first of our 2 champ cards. Not going to be a surprise that they're both going to be on here, up there somewhere. This is another very open-ended, almost like Allura, but a little bit more going on the raw statistical front, where at least you get to commit foundations to reduce speed and maybe shave a stun off of things, or maybe even shave a powerful off of things, actually. But yeah, he makes momentum out of thin air for the price of reviewing cards. He may or may not play review-themed stuff. You can kind of only do that on the good symbol. You don't have to do that. Every time you spend momentum, it's going to end up coming back in your hand. So anything, especially on offense, in particular, if you can spend some momentum on offense, that's also a card draw. You're getting like a free card draw out of it, and you know what card it is because it goes back to your hand. There's a bunch of cards moving around. Kind of character is going to appeal to a lot of players that just like to make little engines out of things. And you figure out the actual, statistical, what attacks are we playing, how are we blocking, etc., etc. is a lot of, dot dot dot. I get a bunch of momentum, and we're gonna figure out how to win with this. A lot like Allura in that sense, but has some card draw to go along with that. Instead of the attack seal, but the speed reduction in some cases might be a little bit better than the one attack seal. Not really, but that's a the attack ceiling is definitely better than that bottom response. But the bottom response and being able to draw cards probably a little bit better than attack seal, I guess is what I'm saying. But yeah, neat character, definitely an engine builder. Bunch of people are going to play him for sure. A bunch of people are going to try this out. Probably more so than the other champ character. Even the other one's probably a little bit better because he's higher on this list. But yeah, I would expect this guy to show up at some point in a top cuts because there's going to be some good players playing him for sure, and Mitchell himself's going to play him for that matter, right? Obviously, and he gets a lot of resources, and there's got to be a way to do something with that. Number 3, Reiner Braun Warrior. I kind of like this guy right now. So I don't have the backside picture. The backside here is interesting. It rewards you for having different card types in your stage, so you want to play assets and or backups. He also gets to like pick up his momentum once he's flipped, but you don't have a whole lot of control over when he flips because he only flips when you go down to 1 health, and then you flip and you go back to 17, Ghidorah style. So when you build this guy, you kind of have to assume that you might be on the front side all game, but it turns out that that's okay because his front side is essentially an Endeavor 3, but you get damage instead of speed early on. If you need to just raw race somebody that's full sending on you and you just get to like backswing them, you get to just put damage on everything, right? Which is better than what Endeavor 3 has a bit of a problem where he's not a real threat until he cycles because he doesn't have damage until after he cycles. Reiner does get damage. He gets the speed part after he cycles. And, much like Endeavor, once he cycles, you can pretty much expect everything's going to get +2/+2 or +3/+3 around the same stat range. You do not get the once per game, but once you flip, you do get some attack finding capabilities, which is probably going to happen sooner or later if they're trying to kill you. But one of the nice things, he has that built-in protection from the one-hit kills. He has built-in protection from if someone's really relying on that powerful 5 to kill you, they have to figure out how they're going to chew through your first 17 health first. Has some good symbols. He also, like, being chaos plus fire and just chaos in general, there's a bunch of like tricky backup things you can be doing now that he has access to that may or may not be worth it compared to just playing a straightforward build. Chaos and Fire each got an attuned foundation that flips and mills 3 for a good effect that you can play both of those and get yourself cycling faster. Also, unlike Endeavor, he gets to mill 4 on defense. So if the opponent is attacking you, the idea of flipping on 3 is much more feasible than it is in Endeavor. So in a lot of ways, kind of a better Endeavor, except that he doesn't have the order symbol and that bought Endeavor a lot of things. But it's not like Chaos and Fire are bad symbols. So I would be surprised if this guy never makes a top cut at some point in 2025. Somebody's going to say, this is the guy, I'm just going to play the stats guy. We're going to play some actions and assets. You don't even have to play backups, but you can. You get paid for it. But yeah, definitely an intriguing character. Number 2, Tarjan. This guy feels like I can spell, I swear. I have this guy as the best Critical Role character right now. Either the popular builds are probably going to be off of Order, because Order has the most exciting asset package. Very much in line with all those like build momentum, use vertical maneuvering equipment to defend yourself stuff, maps right onto this guy. That is exactly in line with everything that he wants to be doing. Needs to find some cards to pull that off. Gets to do some very funny stuff with Badgie from the Star Trek, where every Badgie you play just snap builds and turns into a pseudo commit for +3/+3, so that he can maybe figure an offense out without necessarily sending the powerful 5, but when you do send his powerful 5, which has his face on it, no surprise that he's going to end up making it really, really fast because he's going to have a bunch of assets, and he's already wants to build a lot of momentum. So this guy just maps onto a lot of existing stuff that people are already wanting to do. And if you want to vary off the order symbol, maybe take a downgrade in your asset quality, you also on Air or Life can play Hunter's Ally and build ally assets for free and maybe get some higher difficulty ones going on. So there could be something there as well. But a very capable character that you again, has appeal to a lot of good players. Really like to do asset things, and he certainly gets to do asset things. A lot of players like to do momentum and vertical maneuvering things, and he certainly wants to do those things. He gets to build any 1 difficulty assets for free as well. So you get like Potato for some built-in protection against some things. If you're on order, you get Cabal's Ruin. You get some other things. Gold Tips Imperial is pretty popular for him too. So there's going to be a lot to figure out, right? A lot of the fine details of, okay, how many assets am I playing really? I need to pass my checks at some point, right? How am I going to find the card draw? All the resources you need to pull this together is a big question mark, but a lot of very clear potential for sure in Tarion. And the number one, as per usual, not really surprising at all, the number ones on these lists, it's Nick Reagan. We'll have to see where the consistency is on this, but it's hard to imagine this character not being good enough to at least break into top cuts here and there. So the enhance has a lot of words on it, but the sort of go-to that I've seen that is probably going to continue being the go-to is you're giving +2 speed and +2 damage for everything. You're playing like an 80 to 100 card deck because you have to, because you're cycling basically every time you play an attack, which is kind of crazy. But you have this critical mass of ways to graft attacks together that have some combination of card draw and helping you pass checks and putting big enhanced damage pumps on things. So for instance, Death from Above has a big get damage enhance. Spirit Gun Final has a big +5 damage enhance. Patchwork Baby in the middle of a string, grafted onto a random 3-diff is gonna add a lot of damage to the move. And then you have, World's Weakest Hunter draws 3 cards. Some people run Spirit Gun Mega to draw some cards. There's other things you can run that draw cards. Dark Interruption draws a card and guarantees your next check. You run a Final Smash to guarantee your next check. So you're just running like a mix of these things, as well as some low difficulty attacks like Teaming with the Attack Titan and Besiege, for instance, to just try to put together a very Ymir-shaped string, right? It's a lot of 5, 6, 7 speed highs mostly. It ends up being a lot of highs, and some Besieges are mid, I guess. And they're all doing, 7, 8, 10, 12 types of damage. Except that, unlike Ymir, when he's running well, he gets to do this on 2, which is pretty much just kills, a lot of decks if you don't have some kind of trick or way to interrupt it, or Airy Smiles, right? That kind of thing. But he is a 5-hander. He needs to find the stuff. He needs to even, not whiff on his removes. And, if you do the remove 8 on a big damage dealing move and all you get is more damage dealing stuff, and then they block that move and now you have to pass your next check honest, or you haven't drawn any cards this turn, or that sort of thing, he can kind of trip over himself. So I don't know if it's a huge contender to win a lot of events, but it's hard to imagine he's not going to be around and making some top cuts. So we have Nick Reagan here as our number 1 prospect. And so that will do it. That will wrap up our list of our top 20. This one was, kind of easy and kind of hard to make. I think there were... I got down to 30 pretty quickly. Getting down to 20 was a little bit harder. Sorting them within, I think, kind of the top half-ish, top third-ish of this list are a bit of a clear step above the rest of it. So in that sense, it was a little bit weird, actually ordering anything from 8 to 20 or whatever. But yeah, hopefully, this gave some food for thought. Maybe, highlighted some characters you haven't looked at in a while that you might want to try out for one reason or another. Shout out in the comment if there's a character I left off of here that you've been having some success with or you feel really good about. I'd love to hear about it. Remember, anything that made a top cut randomly at some point is not eligible for this list, so it's possible that a character was left out for that reason. But, there's lots of characters that I looked at and thought about a little bit and just decided not to put on here, so... yeah, so leave any comments about that stuff. Hope people like this, and for people going to Denver, I will see you there, and hope everyone has a good time despite whatever nonsense is going on in this format. Oh, and also, if you made it all the way through the end of this video and you're watching this on Thursday morning, there is an intention, and we'll see if everything comes together, to do a podcast with myself, Kevin Broberg, Justin Birch, and Will Godby, if I'm not mixing up my Will last names. So that will be on a channel that Justin Birch has set up. He's kind of going to be managing the whole thing from, an editing and streaming and etc. perspective. So keep an eye out on the content posting channels for that. I don't remember exactly what time we're doing that. But if you're listening, morning of on Thursday, that'll happen at some point that day. So hopefully you'll see some of you there. And until then, have a nice night.